What do the Texas Longhorns need to do to shock the world and upset Ohio State at the Cotton Bowl? We'll talk about it on today's edition of the BK Show. And it's not just me on today's edition of the BK Show. We are joined by the second strongest man in Austin sports media. I think I'm going to give Mark Henry the title of strongest man in Austin sports media. But Eric, does it feel fair to call you number 2 on that list?
First off, BK, appreciate you having me on. It's a new platform here, so I'm always honored to be on with Mr. Brad Kellner. As far as the second strongest man in Austin, if I may say so myself. Now, here's the thing, BK. Here's the rub. Football season usually does it to me in terms of consistency of gym runs. It has not been my best. I can still throw up 315 a couple times on the bench if needed. But I'm going to go and say it with my chest. I was at a holiday party with some Austin sports media. Mr. Mark Henry was there. And listen, Mark Henry is still a world champion power lifter, all the things that he has accomplished in his career. But he's not in his prime. I can give Mark Henry a run for his money, depending on the lift. Depending on the lift.
How about that? I think you're digging your own grave right there. You know who you're messing with when you say that, right?
I likely am, BK. I likely am, but, I'm in a good mood, so what the hell?
That's awesome. Yeah, no, your biceps are bigger than my torso. So impressed by what you do in the gym, but also impressed by what you do covering the Texas Longhorns. Y'all can find Eric on horns247.com. And of course, you can hear and watch Eric every weekday on False Start on Texas Sports Unfiltered with Keenan Womack from 12 to 1. And Eric kind enough to spend a few minutes of his time today previewing this Friday's college football playoff semifinal between the Texas Longhorns and the Ohio State Buckeyes. Eric, I started today's video asking the question, what do the Longhorns need to do to shock the world? Texas is a 6-point underdog, but it kind of feels like they're a 26-point underdog the way people are talking about this game. I have not heard a single person locally or nationally pick the Longhorns to win this game on Friday. So I've got a couple of things written down, but I'd love to get your thoughts as a guy who's obviously watched every snap of Texas this season and a guy who I know has done his research on this Ohio State team. Give me a couple of things that you think Texas needs to do to find a win and advance to the national championship.
3 things, BK. 1, they need to start fast. We all know that has been somewhat of an Achilles heel for Steve Sarkisian's club, not just this year, but over the past 2 seasons. It's been up and down as far as, getting to play a full 60 minutes of football. Last year, they'd start fast, and then you'd have those weird hiccups in the second half. This year, it was a struggle to get them to start fast, and then they'd kind of become a second-half team. And now it feels, BK, as if it's almost been reversed, which is a nice segue into my second thing. Win the third quarter, because third quarters over the past 6-7 weeks have been abysmal, quite frankly. I asked Steve Sarkisian about it a couple of weeks ago, excuse me, and he mentioned, and I'm not critiquing Steve for this answer, he was going off the top of his head, what first thing that came to his head, but in his answer, he said that he would have liked to have thought that his teams had pretty sizable leads coming out of halftime, which just isn't true. It's not the case. Those were either tight games or games that Texas had a lead, but not a 30-point lead. They had a lead in which, hey, you get that ball the third quarter, you get a chance to, punch it in, get a touchdown, then you really are on the road to putting this game out of reach, right? Look no further than the Georgia game, SEC title game, the Peach Bowl. What's happened, quite frankly, the last 2 times that Texas has really struggled in the third quarter, you look at that Peach Bowl, they had 8 total yards. Take a look at the SEC title game. I believe they had 11 total yards. They weren't running a ton of plays. Those third quarters allowed for Georgia and Arizona State to have hope, and then they paved that into a fourth quarter, which went to overtime, and we saw those games win. At least, luckily for the Texas, the Peach Bowl side of things ended with the good guys on top, but winning the third quarter. And here's the third thing. If you look at Ohio State's loss to Michigan, Brad, what Michigan kind of – I don't want to say they out-schemed, because it wasn't really an out-scheme. It basically was, hey, we are going to provide a light box. We're going to say Mason Graham and company are the strength of that defensive line. If Ohio State runs it, stop them. And we're going to devote everything else to trying to keep those receivers in check. Yeah. first of all, Texas is a much better defense than Michigan. Now, Michigan has talented guys on defense, no doubt, but Texas, as a sum of all parts, has a more talented defense. But I think that could be a strategy, is saying, hey, we're going to give you a light box. Quinshaw Junkins and I'm forgetting the other running back off the top of my head right now, but give them an opportunity to run the football, see if your front four, front five, front six can stop it, and then allow your secondary to go out there and play football. So those are three things I'm really keeping my eye on for Texas to, make this thing competitive. And I think it'll be competitive, BK. I do genuinely believe this will be a much tighter game than people believe it will be.
Yeah, I should have phrased the question differently, Eric. I should have asked you, what realistic things can Texas do to win this game on Friday? And I think 1 and 3 are realistic. I think they could get off to a fast start, and I think they can play a similar defense to what Michigan did in their upset over Ohio State a few weeks ago. But I have zero faith that Texas is capable of winning a third quarter against anybody. I mean, it has been a disaster. And it's not just 1 or 2 games. I mean, this is a trend that has gone on for the last 7 games. The Longhorns have scored just 9 total third quarter points in their last 7 games. So, I would love for that to be the case. But, Eric, Texas could be up 21-3 at halftime on Friday. Do I think that's going to happen? No. But I will still be, shitting bricks, pardon my French, at Jerry World because, well, they haven't played the third quarter yet. So I've got no confidence that the third quarter is going to go the way Texas fans want it to go.
And BK, here's the thing that's been so weird, right? Is, listen, things do happen in a ball game. Every ball game is different. Let's start with the Arizona State game. You get those 2 scores in the first quarter. Your offense isn't on the field for a ton of time. Your defense is out there entering the fourth quarter. Texas' defense is out there for 30-something minutes, 32 minutes, right? Each game is kind of weird. But the third quarter against Arizona State, where it was 3 and out, you get a couple sacks, it's like you could see it coming, right? And I am putting that. I don't think it's unfair to put that squarely at the feet of Steve Sarkisian. He's the play caller, right? So even if it is, and I'm not saying that any play caller in America goes out with this mindset, but just try this on for size. Even if it's, all right, I just need to get my defense some rest. Let's just run it 3 times. Let's see where that gets us. At least you chew up 2 minutes that way, right? If you use the 35-second play clock, at least you chew up 2 minutes that way. As opposed to you chew up 2 minutes in the entire third quarter, right? Yeah. So even if that's it, and the second thing, and this is the one that I am less of a believer in, I think halftime adjustments are overrated. Coaches, the majority of the adjustments, you can do those things on the sideline with the technology and iPads. But if there's such a mentality thing, right? And again, I laid that at the feet of Steve Sarkisian. That's, guys, this is how we need to attack this half. That's on him, right? So to your point, it is a very real concern for Texas fans.
Absolutely. Guys, please like this video. If you're watching this live, hit us up in the live chat. If you're watching after the fact, please leave your comments below. Your thoughts on what Texas needs to do to knock off Ohio State on Friday. We'll take your score predictions as well, but shout out to DWD for the subscription. Shout out to Longhorn in Omaha. How about that? 30-24. A Texas upset on Friday. Like that prediction right there. Yeah, I don't know what Texas is doing at halftime in these games, but it's definitely a mental thing now, right? I mean, this team is too good, and it's not like they're playing bad in every fourth quarter, and it's not like they're playing bad in first and second quarters. It's just the third quarter. 7 straight games without a third quarter touchdown. They only have 3 points in the last 5 third quarters. That was a field goal in the first round victory over Clemson. So whatever they're doing at halftime, like I know Steve Sarkisian a week or 2 ago said, we usually get what we emphasize, and we've been emphasizing that. Well, emphasize it more, or maybe emphasize something else, because it ain't working right now. So they got to switch up their routine. Because, yeah, you cannot just give away a full quarter of football against a team as good as Ohio State. It almost cost you against Arizona State. It sure as hell will cost you against the Buckeyes. So, yeah, whatever their plan is, I don't know how you get that sort of mental block out of your head, but that's a huge key. I mean, I agree with you, but unfortunately, it doesn't feel like it matters what happens in the other three quarters. Texas just can't get out of its own way right out of halftime.
And real quick, BK, the reason I lay at the feet of Steve Sarkisian, let's be clear. We're speaking broadly and speaking generally and saying this Texas team needs to perform better. Well, it ain't the team, right? It's the offense. All the numbers you just laid out. It's not the team. The Texas defense is doing everything it can to make up for the offense's inefficiency, ineffectiveness in those third quarters, right? So that's why I said I lay at the feet of Steve Sarkisian, whether it's as the play caller, right? Even if it's okay. We're just trying to hang on. And like I said, no coach goes into it with this mindset. But even if it's we're just trying to hang on and we need to just give our guys some rest, then you call the game that way. Or if it's a attitude thing from the offense, it lies at his feet because he is the offensive, for all intents and purposes, the coordinator of this team.
Sure. So I agree with your three keys. I wrote down 4 of my own, and a couple of these are pretty similar to what you've got. But one of them is start fast, right? Similar to your number 1. I mean, you look at what Ohio State has done in its 2 playoff games. They were up 21-0, 8 minutes in to their first round game against Tennessee. And they were up 17-0, 10 seconds into the second quarter in that Rose Bowl victory over Oregon. So Oregon and Tennessee, they started about as slow as you possibly could start against Ohio State, and it cost them. The good news for Texas, the Longhorns have the 3rd best first quarter defense in college football, and they've got the 9th best first quarter offense in college football. That's in terms of points per game, not yards. So Texas is actually better than Ohio State in both of those categories. You have to give yourself a shot. I mean, one of the advantages that the Longhorns have, they're playing this game in Arlington, right? This is as close to a home game as you could possibly get. If the Buckeyes jump out to a 14-0 lead, then that crowd is sitting on its hands and it's quiet and you lose that home field advantage that you had. And I go back to that Michigan game, E. Henry, and the Michigan Wolverines were able to plant that seed of doubt early on. And you could tell it like messed with Ohio State, and they puckered up and they played tight in that game. You got to let them know that this game is going to be closer to that game than what the Buckeyes got away with against Oregon and Tennessee. So, yeah, starting fast I think is huge. Texas has been pretty good at that this season. But it probably goes without saying that if the Buckeyes play first quarters like they did in their first 2 CFP games, then Texas's season is going to come to an end on Friday night.
Yeah, and here's the interesting thing. It's ironic, or I should say ironic, but it's interesting you raise the parallel between Michigan and Ohio State in this contest. Well, I will say this for Ohio State, right? When you've lost to your rivals many times as you have, that will lay some doubt in your mind when it's like, we're supposed to be the better team. We're very much clearly been the better team this year, and now they're doing this to us. That'll lay some doubt, right? Yeah. So I think that's a bit of a special circumstance. But to your point, I will say it's with the crowd, especially, and let's just call a spade a spade. We're looking at this, these temperatures, snow. That's another thing is if this Texas crowd, and again, it should be a very much pro-Texas crowd, just sitting on their hands and they're cold and they're bundled up and it's like, man, I traveled for this. Yeah, it's going to be very crucial that Texas can start fast. And that's something that, again, I don't like to psychoanalyze, Steve Sarkisian. However, the opening script, and a lot of it has been made about Steve Sarkisian and kind of his opening 10 to 20 plays. It's very hard to mimic that when you come out in the third quarter because the game is now dictating what you're calling, right? As opposed to we're dictating to the game how we're going to try to, make this happen. Now the circumstances, whatever you're behind, the score in the game, whatever, injuries are now dictating what it is you're trying to do. But I do think, again, and I hate to sound repetitive, it's on Steve, right? It's on him. Because like I said, this defense has done its part. It's the offense that just hasn't.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Another key that I had written down, low and slow, like you're smoking a chicken or smoking brisket. You've got to make Ohio State put drives together, meaning you can't give up explosive plays. Like you look at that game against Oregon, Ohio State had first half touchdown drives of 3 plays, 2 plays, and 1 play. There's a 45-yard touchdown pass, 42-yard touchdown pass, 43-yard touchdown pass, and 66-yard touchdown run. Sorry to go box score YouTube on you there, but that's what killed Oregon in that second round matchup. Ohio State had 3 other first half drives, 6 plays, ended in a punt, and then 2 10-play drives that ended in field goals. Now, you don't want to give up 10-play drives because that means your defense isn't getting off the field, but giving up field goals is a hell of a lot better than giving up touchdowns. So the Ohio State offense has found his explosiveness in the Oregon game, in the Tennessee game, and you can't let that beat you. Now, the good news is Texas has the 3rd best pass defense in the country. Texas, I believe, is 7th in the nation in explosive plays allowed on defense. You've got the Thorpe Award winner at corner. You've got a ton of experience at safety. Everybody's favorite player, Michael Taft, at safety, of course, Eric, a household name for all of the right reasons. But you have to, if you're Texas, find a way to make Will Howard and that offense put together 7, 8, 9, 10-play drives if they want to score. Because if you give up big plays, well, you're barbecue chicken, speaking of that chicken.
Yeah, and it's twofold, right? I mean, like you said, you don't necessarily want to have those extended drives. That means your defense isn't getting off the field. I think the other facet there is forcing turnovers. I do think Texas will find a way to force Will Howard into a turnover or two. When you talk about Texas being 7th in the nation as far as explosive plays allowed, that safety group, and I shouldn't say duo because it's been Jelani McDonald, Michael Taft, and Andrew Makuba have been excellent this year. And that's part of what happens when you play 2 high safety, right? The emphasis of that defense is to take away the big play. Now, of course, some of that is the pass rush, right? If you don't have the time to sit back there, stand back there, you're not necessarily looking downfield, and you've certainly got big play wideouts like Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate and Igbuka and others, right? So they have the capability to do so. But this is where it's a Colin Simmons game. It's a Trey Moore. It's an Anthony Hill. And again, I'm really interested to see how PK kind of does this in the sense of when to time up the blitz. You know, sometimes if you look, and this is I'll point to the last 2 CFP games. If you look at PK, he's kind of done something unique where they've used Jelani McDonald more so in the Arizona State game than the Clemson game as the nickel in place of Jalen Gilbo, which gives you a presence in the run game and the run fit. And Jelani has been really good in coverage, but that also allows PK to be a little bit exotic with some of the blitzes. How many times have you seen Jahdae Barron end up kind of in that Mike spot in blitz, right? And be unexpected there. So those are some of the things I think you can do to speed up Will Howard. And again, I think that's going to be crucial, forcing a turnover in addition to, in Texas' goal line defense, red zone defense has been great, right? You know, forcing teams, holding teams to 3 points. But in addition to, hey, if they are going to score, make them earn it, make them work for it. Got to force a turnover or two. Because I don't want to make this seem like it's, David versus Goliath, because it's not.
No.
However, there are things in terms of, helping your offense out, helping the team out that I think are going to come in play, whether that's a defensive turnover, whether that's special teams. Not just looking at Bert Auburn, not just looking at Bert, but, in the return game. You're going to need some of those things come Friday.
Oh, no, don't say special teams. Texas has been one of the worst special teams in America all season long. And it's funny, Eric, like they had a punt return touchdown and a blocked field goal against Arizona State, and they still lost the special teams facet of the game. Like that's how many screw ups they had against Arizona State. So I don't disagree with you. A game that's supposed to be close. It's a 1-possession line in Vegas right now. That third phase is going to matter a lot, but my goodness, if there's anything on this Texas team that I have less confidence in than special teams, I have yet to find it. That's terrifying if this is a game that comes down to that, because that's been a problem all year long for Jeff Banks.
And it feels so weird to say, because Jeff Banks is a guy who makes 7 figures as a coordinator, one of the best, most well-respected special teams coordinators in the nation.
Yeah.
But BK, as the saying goes with special teams and offensive line, you don't notice it until it's bad, right? Last year, Keelan Crawford, Keelan Robinson, and your Gunners always making plays. You get plays in the return game from Xavier Worthy and Keelan Robinson. It's like, oh man, Jeff Banks is great. Everyone's singing his praise. This year, when you have no Ryan Sanborn as a punter, Bert Auburn's missing kicks, Mo Blackwell. I still looked at that play and I'm like, I don't know if Mo just got frozen and was like, I don't want to I don't want to, just take out the punter, but I also want to go for the ball. But he whiffed and caught absolutely nothing and then gave them a first down, right? So that's how it is with special teams. When it's bad, it's noticeable. But when it's good, it almost doesn't get the respect that it deserves.
Yeah, no, Texas has had a top 5 special teams unit in the country the last 2 seasons, right? Even 8-5 in 2022, Texas was one of the highest graded special teams groups in America. But this year, I think they rank 120th on the ESPN S&P Plus rankings. That's a mouthful right there in special teams. So disaster. But I'm with you on the turnovers. Like this is something that matters in every game. But hey, Texas has been good at taking the ball away all season long. They're second in the country with 30 takeaways, one behind Notre Dame. They've got 21 interceptions as a defense this year, and Will Howard has thrown 9 picks this year. So I think, like, on paper, Texas has 13 more takeaways as a defense than Ohio State. And even though Texas has been prone to give the ball away, Ohio State hasn't been the cleanest team in the country either. So there's an opportunity there for Texas. If they can win the turnover battle, they've got a shot to pull off the upset. Eric, if they lose the turnover battle, like if Quinn Ewers throws another pick or two, if Jaden Blue's fumbleitis returns on Friday, like, you cannot give that offense extra possessions and short fields. Like, you have no chance to beat them, I think, if you have a crooked number of turnovers. Maybe if you give it away one time, you can be okay. But if we're talking 2 or 3 or worse in the giveaway department, then I think it's going to be a frustrating night for Horns fans.
BK, I don't necessarily mind the turnovers. Now, as you said, multiple, then all right, you're getting a little dicey.
Yeah.
It's the field position game that matters to me. Look no further than that Georgia game, right? The first one. That was a field position game. That was the offense, whether it was turning the ball over in Texas territory or, you don't sustain long drives and then you're punting and then all of a sudden you give a return and the ball's in Texas territory, right? That, to me, I think is huge. And that goes back to the complementary football that Steve Sarkisian is always saying. Complementary football, offense complementing the defense, complementing special teams. And I wrote this. How about, the offense somehow just complement overall, right? And forgive me, I reversed the saying. It's defense complementing offense, complementing special teams. How about the offense complement the defense, right? Yeah. But no, the field position is going to be huge in this game. Again, like I talked about, Texas's defense, they preach that red zone lockout. Even against Arizona State, forcing field goals, right? One of the weird things, BK, and I don't want to, look backwards too much, but the sentiment coming out of the Arizona State game, at least I'll say a vocal minority on our Horns 24/7 message boards, was, oh man, well, Eric, why are you writing about the defense? They gave up X amount of points. I'm like, yeah, because they were out there forever. As great as the defense is, they're going to fold at some point, right? Like, so there's that. But no, to the point you made, I think Texas can overcome turnovers. Again, I hesitate to say plural, but field position is going to be huge because you can't just gift them short fields.
That's well said. And I forgot what complimentary football was. Like, it's been so long since Texas has played that for a 4-quarter game that I don't even know what you're talking about when you say that. But yeah, it'd be nice for all 3 phases to play well for 60 minutes. I mean, that's kind of what it's going to take, I think, to beat this Ohio State team, because they're a buzzsaw right now. Yeah. Now, another thing that gives me some faith is, like, I didn't watch every snap of Ohio State football this year, but I watched enough of them during the regular season to know that the team we saw against Tennessee and the team we saw against Oregon was not the team that we saw for all 12 games in the regular season. Like, we all saw the Michigan game. We all saw Texas go up to Ann Arbor and beat the brakes off of that same Michigan team that went into the horseshoe at the end of the year, not in August or September, but at the end of the year, and beat the Ohio State team. So they're not unbeatable. They're the 8th seed. They didn't make their conference championship game. Like, there are ways for Texas to win this. But saying all of that, making sure people don't think I'm disrespecting Ohio State here, Texas is going to have to play damn near perfect football to find a way to get this done. And the last thing I have, Eric, I mean, this one could apply to any game in any level of football, but I think Texas has the horses to do it. They just have to do it. They've got to win up front, both sides of the ball. Like, this goes to what you were talking about earlier, but we're talking about a Joe Moore Award finalist offensive line with a ton of talent and a ton of experience. Like at times, this offensive line has looked like it's one of the best in the country, but unfortunately, at times it's looked very mediocre. But then on the defensive line, like Texas has the recipe. They've got the players to do what Michigan did in that game at the Horseshoe like a month ago. So there are opportunities there that Texas has the bodies up front on both sides of the line of scrimmage. I don't want to say impose their will because that feels too strong, but at least do enough to be able to run the game plan you want to run in this game. The big uglies up front, they are going to play a huge role in determining who moves on in this one.
This has kind of gone under the radar a little bit. Let's not forget, Texas hasn't had its full starting five, its full complement of offensive linemen since the Kentucky game. Because Kelvin Banks went down early against A&M. That forced Trevor Gooseby to make a couple starts. And Cam Williams goes down, right? That forces Trevor Gooseby back into the lineup. So getting this full complement of offensive linemen, and for everything we've kind of been hearing, Cam Williams is going to be good to go for Friday's game. I think that's going to be huge. You talk about winning the battle up front. Remember that Texas A&M game, BK? How physical that group was up front and really establishing the line of scrimmage. It's going to take that. It's going to take that. I'm going to focus squarely on the offensive line because I think Texas' defensive line will be there. Bill Norton, Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton, Ethan Burke, Barron Sorrell, et cetera. Those guys will be there. But it's that offensive line, that physical mindset. And listen, I am not going to ever question. I mean, the talent is there. Banks going to be a first-round pick. Cam Williams going to be a first-round pick. Jake Majors will be in the NFL this time next year. DJ Campbell probably back next year, but he'll be in the NFL when his time comes. Hayden Connor is a guy who is a fringe pro as well. I mean, they got all the studs up front, but it's going to take that physical mindset of saying, "Hey, we got to rise to the occasion." And listen, I hesitate to say this, but I think given the past two performances, you can put it out there. Maybe kind of that urgency, that mindset of, man, we're going to College Station that night, facing the old rival. It's going to be 100,000 versus us. Maybe you don't get as much of that when you're A, playing at home against Clemson, and B, playing against an Arizona State team that, no disrespect to the Sun Devils, certainly, are not going to really strike fear in you in the way that you get up for that A&M game. So maybe it's, hey, we're here, we're in Arlington, it's a semifinal. You got to bring that mindset.
Yeah, maybe this is what Texas needs. I mean, I think everybody knows at this point, the last time the Longhorns were an underdog was on the road at Alabama in week 2 of the 2023 season. Texas not only covered, but they won that game outright and handed Nick Saban his worst home loss of his Alabama career. So maybe that's the pick-me-up. Maybe Texas needs the nobody believes in us card that Kirby Smart plays so well at Georgia. Maybe that's what Texas needs. But I'll tell you what, Eric, you're a nicer guy than I am. You're a better person than I am. So you would never say something like this. I'm pretty sick and tired of the offensive line saying they've got a chip on their shoulder, or the offensive line room saying we had a come to Jesus meeting. I heard Kelvin Banks and Jake Majors both said that yesterday. And it's like, well, when I heard that after the first Georgia game. And then I heard it after the Vanderbilt game. And then I heard it after the second Georgia game. Like, how many times do you get to say we're pissed about how we played and we're on a mission to play better without you actually playing better? Now, that's the thing. The Texas O-line has had some great performances this year. A&M, one of them. Kentucky, one of them. Clemson, one of them. We know what they're capable of, but it's not like they've had one bad game as a unit to where it's like, oh, that's the anomaly. I mean, there are 4 or 5 of these games where it's like, why is the Texas offensive line looking like this week when we know they can look like that another week? So I just, with JTT and Jack Sawyer and Tyleik Williams and all those studs the Buckeyes have up front, like I wish I could say I'm super confident that this O-line is going to deliver, but I'm scared as hell about that group right now.
BK, in this line of work, you get used to hearing repetitive answers.
Yeah, you know more than I do. You're at all these press conferences. My lazy ass is just at home watching them after the fact. So ain't that the truth?
So I'll give you that. But really quick to your point, no. I mean, I'll give you another one of their catchphrases, right? The standard is the standard, right? Well, they've established what they can do. They're going to have to be that on Friday.
Yeah, it's well said. All right, we'll get you out of here in a second. Shout out to all of you who are commenting. I'll stay on for a few minutes and answer some of y'all's questions, but I know E. Henry's got to get to the Moody Center for this Texas-Auburn basketball game. God bless you in that one. How about it, Quinn Sewers? Is that what Ohio State fans are calling Quinn Ewers? I have not seen this so far.
I haven't heard that one either.
Quinn Sewers chose the wrong school, is what Buckeyes fans are apparently saying right now. There you go. All righty, Henry. This was a lot of fun, man. Always appreciate your insight. Thanks so much for stopping by the BK show, and hopefully we get the chance to do this again soon, my man.
Always a pleasure. Anytime you'll have me on, I'm always happy to swing by, BK.
You're the man. Good luck at the game. Enjoy the game tonight, brother. See you soon.
Appreciate it, my man.
All right, there he goes. Eric Henry, Horns 24/7 and Texas Sports Unfiltered. I told him 20 minutes. He gave us about 30. I'm a bad guy, but Eric's a great guy for hanging out. So, I basically gave my 4 keys to a Longhorn upset. Again, win up front on both lines of scrimmage. I'll go more in depth on that in a second. Low and slow is number 2. That means don't give up the explosive plays to that Ohio State offense that has clearly found its explosiveness in this college football playoff. Start fast. You can't let the Buckeyes start the way that they did in their first 2 CFP games and then win the turnover battle. Texas does those 4 things, and they're not like you hear 4 things and you're thinking, oh my God, that's going to take a ton for those to happen. No, these aren't things that Texas isn't capable of doing. These are things that if Texas is playing its game, we've seen them do multiple times over the course of this season. But if Texas isn't buttoned up for 60 minutes on Saturday, then the season ends in the college football playoff semifinal for the 2nd consecutive year. And that's not what any of us wants. Hit me up on the comment line if you're watching this live. Appreciate the support. By the way, I'm not sure if y'all saw this, but this is a new feature to the BK show. I'm hoping the comment actually pinned. I don't even know if it works, so you guys will have to tell me if this thing is happening. But the Have It Your Way hotline. Yeah, the BK show. So, of course, we're calling it the Have It Your Way hotline. It is live. You can click that link, and we can bring you on the show. If you've got some questions, if you've got some comments, some thoughts about Texas and Ohio State, bring it on. I don't know any other Texas YouTuber who is doing stuff like this. So would love to hear from y'all. Obviously, the comment works as well. The live chat is rocking and rolling. But if you want to actually be a part of the show, then the Have It Your Way hotline is rocking and rolling. So more on this Texas offensive line. I mean, which group are we going to get, right? Are we going to get the group that ran for 240 plus against A&M, the group that ran for 240 plus against Kentucky, the group that ran for 292 against Clemson? Or are we going to get the group that averaged 1.8 yards a carry against Arizona State and had a bunch of penalties in that game, especially in the 4th quarter and in overtime? Are we going to get the group that ran for 1.1 yards a carry in both Georgia games? Texas gave up 7 sacks in that Georgia game here in Austin. They gave up 4 sacks against Vanderbilt. The penalty problems have been problematic, for lack of a better word, way too often with those guys up front. If we get one of those type of O-line games, then nighty-night. If we get one of the best in the country offensive line performances and we see why Texas, Joe Moore's dead. He's not announcing the Joe Moore Award. If we see why Texas was named one of the 3 finalists for the Joe Moore Award as the best offensive line in college football this season, then I think the Longhorns have a very, very good shot to win. And then going to the other side of the football, a little more on the Texas D-line going up against the Ohio State offensive line. Look, Eric said he's pretty confident in the Texas defensive front. They have passed just about every test that they've faced this season. And I will say this, if there is an on-paper weakness for this Ohio State team, it is the offensive line. They're down 2 starters. Their left tackle and their center are both out for the season. That group struggled against Michigan. Now they moved Donovan Jackson, who was an elite left guard. They moved him to left tackle, and he's actually been really good there. I think better than even Buckeyes fans had hoped. But they have had some issues at left guard now that Donovan Jackson is not there anymore. And the hope is that this really good Texas front can disrupt what Ohio State wants to do. The Longhorns have the horses, right? They've got Bill Norton and Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins and all of those guys up the middle. They've got one of the best edge rooms in all of college football with Trey Moore, who's come on very strong as of late, Barron Sorrell, Colin Simmons, the Sean Alexander Freshman of the Year award winner, our guy Ethan Burke. The list goes on and on. So Texas has the bodies. They've got the depth. They've got the talent to win against that Ohio State offensive line. Can they actually do it? Michigan held Ohio State's offense to 3 yards per carry in that game. Nebraska, 6-6, I guess 7-6 Nebraska with Timu Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. They held Ohio State to 2.1 yards a carry in that close Buckeyes victory this season. So it's possible. It's possible to get to Ohio State's offensive line. Again, calling it a weakness almost feels wrong because it's still probably one of the better offensive lines in America. But on paper, I think that matchup kind of favors Texas, and it has to favor Texas in between the lines on Friday night for the Longhorns to get the win, because you cannot let that Buckeyes run game get going. Maybe more importantly, you cannot let Will Howard have time to pick you apart in the pocket, because Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate and Emeka Ibuka, those guys are too damn good. If you've watched these 2 playoff games, you don't need me to tell you that. You already know. I like this, Craig. Yeah, you need the big, nasty offensive line, not the Charmin ultra soft offensive line. You need those guys to show up. You need Kelvin Banks to prove to. This is a money game for Kelvin Banks. Look, Kelvin Banks is going to be a top 10 pick in the draft, regardless of how he plays on Friday. But if he wins his matchups consistently against JTT and Jack Sawyer, whoever's on his side, then Kelvin Banks, sorry, Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks will definitely be the first offensive lineman taken, and he could be a top 5 pick in the draft come April. Jake Majors is a guy who's probably going to get drafted, but he could improve his draft stock with a great game against Tyleik Williams in the teeth of that Ohio State defense. How about Cam Williams on the right side, going up against the other elite Ohio State edge? JTT and Jack Sawyer both were top 10 recruits in the country coming out of high school. Cam Williams, I think it's crazy to think that he's a first-round pick, but a lot of mock drafts have him going in round 1. He can prove me wrong and prove the mock drafters right if he can hold up against whoever he's matched up against on Friday. So Texas, once again, they got the big dogs. It's an experienced, talented offensive line. Will they show up, and will Steve Sarkisian be willing to abandon the zone running game if it's not working? Because feels like Sark has been very stubborn with that. If that works, yeah, look at the Clemson game. Look at the A&M game. Look at the Kentucky game. It's a thing of beauty. When it doesn't work, well, Texas averages less than 2 yards a carry, and you put way too much on Quinn Ewers' plate, and you lose, or you're very close to losing, and you need double overtime to beat a team like Arizona State. All right, we'll go for a few more minutes here, maybe 5 more minutes. Appreciate the love, guys. Got a bunch of people tuned in this afternoon. By the way, please like this video if you haven't yet. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. The BK Show, putting out daily content. This is your one-stop shop for all things Texas Longhorn sports, not just football. We'll talk some basketball. I feel like I owe you an apology for saying that. And we'll talk some baseball. We'll talk volleyball. We'll talk everything on this channel. Obviously, football dominating the news cycle right now, and we hope it dominates it for a couple more weeks. Remember the national championship game 2 weeks from yesterday. Hope to be doing this show in Atlanta 2 weeks from today, talking about Texas winning the whole effing thing. Josh, I agree. Got to survive the first quarter. Don't let Ohio State go up 14-0, 17-0. That'd be a disaster. Like, I almost feel like Texas has to have a lead at halftime because of the third quarter woes. Texas was up 6-3 at halftime against Georgia and lost. They're up 17-3 at halftime against Arizona State, and we know how that went down. So having a halftime lead is no guarantee for anything, but I'll feel a lot better about the Horns' chances if they do go into the locker room with some sort of lead, considering, how bad Texas has been coming out of the locker room in the third quarter. What are they doing? I never know what they're doing in the locker room. Why? It's a lost cause, I feel like, at this point. Chief says Will Howard is 0-3 against Texas. The Longhorns know how to play him. Texas gets the win. Yeah, I picked Ohio State to make the national championship before the season started. I had them losing to Georgia. Bold picks. I know. Thank you. I'll be here all year. The reason I didn't pick Ohio State to win at all is because I just don't trust Will Howard. I think the Buckeyes have the most talented roster in college football, and I think we've seen that come to fruition in the last 2 games that they've played. But I still have some doubts about Will Howard. K-State's different. There was no Jeremiah Smith at Kansas State, no Travion Henderson or Quinshon Judkins at Kansas State. So I I don't know how much you can take from those 3 performances that Will Howard had as a member of the Wildcats and, bring him to this game. But Texas has maybe learned some things about Will Howard, and they know what he's going to bring to the table. The question is, do they have enough to stop the other 10 guys who have definitely elevated Will Howard's play? He's obviously having the best game of his college career, and he's playing the best football I think he has played in his college career here in this college football playoff. All right, couple more questions if you guys have them. Once again, appreciate the love and support. I'm double checking my notes. I take notes on this thing for some reason, making sure I didn't forget anything here. Also, pray. Texas could use some divine intervention in this game on Friday. Did I mention that as a key to an upset? That could help. I think Texas still has a chance. I'm kind of annoyed by the way people are talking about this game. It does feel like folks are turning this into a David versus Goliath matchup, which is just crazy to me, considering Ohio State fans wanted Ryan Day to be fired like a month ago. And I love how that narrative has turned to, oh, now it was only like 15% of the idiot fans. Like, it wasn't the real fans. It wasn't the rest of us, the people who actually know Ohio State football. That was just the loud, the vocal minority. It's like, that's convenient for them to say now, because it was way more than 15 to 20% of folks out there calling for Ryan Day's head after that Michigan loss. You had Ohio State fans and people saying, oh, the Buckeyes made a mistake by letting Kyle McCord transfer to Syracuse. That wasn't in August or September. That was a month ago. So, look, Ohio State has played well enough to change the conversation about them. Just saying, like, I get what we saw on January 1st. Texas is going to have to play a hell of a lot better than they did on that day, and you're probably going to need Ohio State to play worse than they did on that day. We're prisoners of the moment. Recency bias is a real thing. That's the last bit we saw from each of these two teams. But Texas can play better than that, and Ohio State can play worse than that. So there's a reasonable path to a Longhorns victory. I think Eric and I laid it out. And I think there are a few more things that Texas can do right to obviously help them knock off the Buckeyes and advance to their first national championship game since the end of the 2009 season. And yeah, we'll end with this one, Josh. Let's just hope the game doesn't come down to Bert Auburn having to make a game-winning field goal. Hey, he can redeem himself. If this situation arises and Texas needs a game-winning field goal in the fourth quarter or in overtime and Auburn delivers, I'll completely forget about the 2 misses in the fourth quarter against ASU. Won't matter at all. Phenomenal, But, yeah, it's a scary thought right now thinking about Bert Auburn, Sideshow Bert, Shit Show Bert, whatever you want to call him, thinking about him having to win the game with his leg. That's a terrifying proposition to Texas fans everywhere. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's edition of the BK Show. Special thanks to Eric Henry for joining us for 30 minutes today. Special thanks to all of you for tuning in. A reminder, please like this video. Please subscribe to the channel. Please spread the word about what we have going on. Texas Longhorn content every single day. Plenty of live shows, plenty of recorded videos as well. This is your one-stop shop for all things Longhorn content on YouTube. We'll be back with more tomorrow. Until then, y'all enjoy the rest of the day. And remember, when you watch the BK Show, you rule. Talk to y'all tomorrow. Hook 'em.